Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Pride, and this is a new FX series that I watched on FX on Hulu, and focuses on a 6-decade journey through the history, the struggles, and the movements that created the LGBTQ plus community. And this is an interesting documentary, and each of these episodes that aired focus on a particular decade, whether it's from 2000s, 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 40s, and starting off in the 40s and leading all the way up to now into the new millennium. And each episode is directed by a member of this community, this very diverse and inclusive cast of directors and stars and people that are interviewed throughout this film that give their perspective on their experiences as part of this community. And that's one of the most personal and interesting things about this, is you do hear from a lot of different people from different backgrounds, because just because they're part of the same community does not mean that they don't come from all these various backgrounds. And you get those kinds of layers in this series as well, including, I remember very distinctly in the last episode, one particular black man was talking about how it's like, yes, inclusion was becoming a big thing in movies and pop culture if you were white. And you had all of these pop culture representations like Modern Family and a lot of different kinds of other shows and films up to this point, but it was mostly white. It wasn't quite when Pose came out, which became a big show for representation of intersectionality of this community along with people from diverse races. And I'm a huge fan of Pose. I'll be watching it tomorrow. Very interesting enough. Also from FX. And this particular series gives such an interesting evolution of what happened. And it was so interesting watching the first one of the 40s, where it's like a lot of people didn't care. And it wasn't really until like McCarthy and like headhunting for gays in the government. And it's just like, well, you couldn't get the communists, so you have to find somebody else to hate. And that's really what kind of caused this big shift in things. And not only do we get to see like the focuses and like obviously with like the 80s really focusing on the AIDS epidemic, and into the 90s, and then really focusing on transgender rights as that has come to the forefront. And even like as the series has been playing, you have all of these laws being passed in different states targeting transgender people and trying to take away their rights. And this show is so interesting in the fact that it shows this evolution and shows how much we've devolved in many ways, and how it's this ebb and flow of, depending on the times, it's like 80s, and especially like right now is not a great time. And you had different times where things seem to be turning around a little bit, but overall you still have this whole narrative of this oppression and lack of rights. And it's an inspiring series focusing on the people who have fought for these rights, who live these lives. And that's the most important thing about this series. And you really get to hear from their perspectives. You get to hear these interviews. You get to hear people talking about those who've made an influence on them. And this really gives a voice. And that's what I appreciate most about this series, Pride. And FX has something pretty special here. This is wrapped up over the course of like 8 days, because the first week 3 episodes drop, the second week 3 episodes drop, and boom, there you are. That's the end. You have these 6 episodes that are so informative and give a lot of perspective on history that a lot of these things I did not know of. And I'm glad that I watched this, because I feel more informed and feel like I'm more knowledgeable in terms of being an ally. And I would definitely recommend this series. This is really worth your time, really hearing voices. And so make sure to go out and check out Pride right now on FX on Hulu. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. And let's talk some TV. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.